Doctors. They exist as doctor of nursing, doctor of music, doctor of acupuncture, doctor of naturopathic medicine, doctor of law, doctor of psychology, so on and so forth. Although those with a doctorate level degree can refer to themselves as doctor, today when we hear the word doctor, we are typically referring to the medical variety. But why? Why is the glory of this weighty title often only extended to medical doctors? Before we get into it, let's set a little historical foundation. The English language history of doctor starts in the early 14th century. This according to Merriam-Webster.com. When the word was first applied to a select few who likely knew neither blood work nor basket work. They were equipped for dealing with matters of the soul. They were eminent theologians who had a special seal of approval from the Roman Catholic Church as people able to talk about and explain the doctrines of the Church. They were teachers of a kind, and the word's origin makes this connection. The word doctor comes from the Latin word for teacher. For a while there, doctors, physicians, healers were referred to as leeches. Leech meant historically physician or enchanter, one who speaks magic words. Healer, physician, one who counsels, and even conjurer. To leech someone was to cure them, an art known as leechcraft. And I just want to interject and highlight the art of the 180, as some people today refer to doctors as leeches, but in a negative sense due to the perception that the industry, through its merging with big pharma and big insurance, have become big on exploiting its consumers, consuming their financial resources with little to no mercy. But let's continue. The connection between physicians and leeches was more of a linguistic one. However, leeches were also used medicinally, likely as far back to the Stone Age. This according to Mori et al. And Mori et al. Goes on to say, healers attributed many illnesses to inappropriate, excessive collections of blood. Hippocratic concepts of disease included the notion that veins can be the site of pathological humors. As an alternative to instrumental bloodletting, the leech offered some advantages. The leech's slower, less painful, more quantitatively dependable extraction of blood was favored by many practitioners. In addition, blood loss at the bite site persisted long after the leech released its grip. Still used clinically today, leeches are currently used for grafted skin flaps, breast reconstruction, digital replants, and periorbital hematomas. Though medical doctors and the leech have worked together, healing patients since seemingly the beginning of time, doctors have moved on from the leech's shadow into their own shining light. Historically, medical doctors, also referred to as physicians, were categorized as healers. And other types of healers would include medicine men and women, herbalists, yogis, elders, and sound healers, amongst many, many others. Jesus, Yeshua, Yahusha, the Messiah, was also referred to as a healer. Bart Ehrman, author of How Jesus Became God, gave an interview to NPR. In it, he discusses some of the qualifiers that certain groups amongst the Greeks, Romans, and Jews had for one being designated as a god. He says, there were basically three ways that this could happen. You find this in Greek and Roman mythology, and you also actually find it in Jewish text. Sometimes you have a human being who is a superior human being, either unbelievably powerful or beautiful or wise, and because of this person's superiority, a god or the gods or the God of Israel exalts the person to heaven and makes that person a divine being. So the person starts out as a human and becomes divine. That's one way that a human can be divine. A second way is that sometimes in legend and mythology, a divine being will have sex with a mortal and the offspring will be a divine human. So that, for example, that's how Hercules is born. Hercules' mother is a mortal, but his father is Jupiter, the king of the gods. So that's a second way. Someone born to the union of a divine being and a mortal being. The third way is that sometimes divine beings can take on a human shape. And so when Jupiter comes down to get Hercules' mother pregnant, he comes down in the form of a human. And so gods can temporarily become human. Now, these ways of looking at it are found in Greek and Roman mythology, but they're also found in Jewish text. The Christians took up all three ways and applied them to Jesus. The earliest Christians maintained that Jesus was a human being who was made God, a divine being. Later, they ended up saying that Jesus was born to the union of God and a mortal because the Holy Spirit came upon Mary, and that's how she conceived Jesus. So Jesus literally had God as his father. And then later, Christians started to say that, in fact, Jesus was a divine being who temporarily became a human being. So these three ways of understanding divine humans in the ancient world are picked up by Christians who developed their Christologies accordingly. And he goes on to say, right at the same time that Christians were calling Jesus God is exactly when Romans started calling their emperors God. So these Christians were not doing this in a vacuum. They were actually doing it in a context, and I don't think that this could be an accident. That this is the point at which the emperors were being called God. And so by calling Jesus God, in fact, it was a competition between your God, the emperor, and our God, Jesus. When Constantine, the emperor, then converted to Christianity, it changed everything because now, rather than the emperor being God, the emperor was the worshiper of the God, Jesus. Now, I always like to stress the difference between the Western Christian understanding of the scriptures and how the ancient Hebrews actually viewed it. Though the Messiah never called himself his own Father, the Creator God, I can understand how Christians would misconstrue this. The Creator God is also referred to as El or Elohim. The ancient Hebrews wrote in pictograph script, and the symbol for El was a shepherd staff and an ox head. According to ancienthebrew.com, ancient Hebrews were an agricultural people raising livestock such as oxen, sheep, and goats. The strongest and most valuable of these is the ox because of its strength. It was used to pull large loads in wagons as well as to plow the fields. The letter, representing the ox head, represents the concrete idea of muscle and strength. A shepherd always carried his staff. It was a sign of his authority and was used to lead the sheep by pushing or pulling them in the correct direction as well as to fight off predators. Since the yoke is also a staff that is used to direct the oxen, the yoke is seen as a staff on the shoulders. The letter, which is a staff, represents the concrete view of a yoke as well as a leadership from the shepherd who leads his flock with the staff. When the two letters are combined, the parent root, which is a staff in the ox head, El is formed with the meaning of an ox in the yoke as well as a strong authority. It was common to place two oxen in the yoke when pulling a plow. An older, more experienced ox was matched with a younger, inexperienced one, so that the younger would learn the task of plowing from the older. This older ox in the yoke is the strong leader of the pair and was the ancient Hebrews' concrete understanding of God. God is the older ox who teaches his people, the young ox, how to work. Furthermore, when the reader of the Bible sees the English word God, beginning with the uppercase G, it is always applied to the creator of the heavens and the earth. The Hebrew word El can refer to this same God, but as the concrete understanding of the word El is a strong and mighty one, this same Hebrew word can be applied to anyone or anything that functions with the same characteristics as seen in the examples below. And you can check out that source for more on that. But Jesus was, of course, given authority, keyword given, and he was prophesied about in Isaiah 11, that he would be coming from the lineage of Jesse, King David's father, that Yah, the Creator God's spirit, not his own spirit, but the Creator's spirit would rest on him, giving him wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, and the fear of Yah. Ultimately, he would be powerful. His effect was two-sided, but really threefold. There were those who opposed and hated him. They downgraded him in their hearts, comparing him to a demon. There were the disciples who were given the spirit of understanding and knew exactly who he was, the promised Messiah, and they became his disciples. Lastly, there were and still are those who exalted him to God status, which isn't wrong per se, just as he quoted to the religious people Psalm 82:6. A God has many qualifiers to which he met. The issue is that some people insist that he is the creator God, that he is his own father, and that is where they go wrong. And this point brings me back to how doctors have been exalted to God status. Medical doctors are capable of healing others, sure. This is done in a few ways, but today the primary form of healing appears to be with pharmaceuticals. Armed with knowledge, counsel, the perceived ability to heal, sometimes good looks, and a high societal status, it is at least partially understandable, if not wholly wrong, how doctors have become gods to many. And there is no denying that some have certainly exalted them to this status. They are, after all, touted as experts. We are influenced to only listen to the so-called experts, as if no one else is allowed to do their own research and form their own opinions. And make no mistake, this God status is also by design. You don't question the gods. You must trust the science, their method of knowledge attainment. It is true that there are many gods, but you only do well if you believe in one.